Right, let's get into the next section, which is on translating text. So, did anyone have any questions after that last lab? Any issues? Other than me telling you to create a resource that was probably too much for the policy? We'll save that one for the next one. All right, let's have a look at translating text then. Same sort of thing. We want to be able to translate from one language to another. So we often have that issue in our organisation because quite often in our Japanese team, people only speak a minor amount of English, so they're always trying to add that additional language into their repertoire, though, so they can actually use this to help them with learning the language as well. But the interesting thing, I suppose, with a language like Japanese is that it is basically symbolic when you go to have a look at how it's written. So using a script, which is not a language sort of scripting methodology. So in this case, you have to not only translate to another language, but you also have to translate away from symbols as well. So that's where transliteration comes into play, the script transliteration. So it will actually convert it in, for example, this written as konnichiwa or hello in English or bonjour in French. It also can detect the language, and then you can see, as part of the transliteration, you can see that it's transliterated that into the Latin representation, which is konnichiwa. So that is a little bit of an additional, so if you're using written Mandarin or another language that actually has symbols, then that can be a little bit tricky as well. So you have this additional feature. So some examples there, you can see on the left is basically the JSON coming in for the three type of detections. The first one there is just to work out whether it's Japanese or not, and you can see the output ISO language on the right hand side and score of how confident it is that it is picked Japanese when it should have. And one of the other things is it's got a couple of pieces of information in there as to whether transliteration is actually supported for that language. So if it was another language, a more obscure written language in symbols, perhaps it would not necessarily translate that, but you can see Japanese is possible there. The transliteration in the body, so you've actually got, when you're calling the API, you can see you would have from and to. So sorry, this is translation, not transliteration, pardon me. You'll actually see that you're translating to two different languages, so they're just going to be separated there from and to, and basically there you'll have extra two arguments if you want to convert it to other things. So in this particular example, we've got the one that you saw on the first page, which was the English version and then the French version, and then of course the last one there is that translation from symbols, and in particular to script is Latin there. So from script is Japanese. So there you go. You can actually see that it's printed that out in Latin representation. So that's quite interesting. But there's other things you can get out of here. For example, you can have a look at some of the options, which will tell you exactly, for example, where the characters and the word alignment is. So again, that's very similar to what we've seen before. So 0 to 4 in the source, characters 0 to 1 in the translation, and characters 6 to 13 in the source, the characters 2 to 3 in the translation there. So you can actually see it gives you where that is located. The sentence length as well, so if you're doing maybe an if statement at the beginning of your work to say, I can only translate up to 5,000 characters, whatever the limit is, then you can actually check that first to see whether it exceeds the limit, and then you could go and then do the translation after that. So kind of a two-step process there. But in this case, it will return basically the sentence length. And there it's also translating from English to basically to German, and you can see that they've added the profanity action, so it's marked that out. So it will star that out, so any obscenity there is going to be asterisked out. So you can see that example there. So you can do looking for bad words along with the translation at the same time. And we know that when you learn a new language, often it's the swear words you learn first. So this is a little bit on what Tirandip was trying to look at before, which is a custom translation. And you can use the custom translator portal for that one. You can link to a workspace in your Azure AI Translator resource, create a project, upload the training data files, and then train the model. So again, you're probably looking at something that is possibly maybe some good use cases for that when you want to be able to translate some of the things like acronyms, I suppose. You could use it for that. You could use it for some sort of Latin translation for species of plants, that sort of thing, where you can take it from its Latin name into its more common name. So you could do your own translation project for that. Any other ideas or how you might want to use the custom translation? Any ideas out there for use cases on this one?
Can this be used for like customer service representatives? Summarization of calls?
Yeah, it could, but I suppose the standard one would be able to translate that. But you're thinking maybe the larger text, maybe doing a custom translation on that could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Tara. Anything else? I always think of that family name one as being a very common one, family name of the species of plants. So in agriculture, in nursery, agriculture, I suppose, nursery plants, sort of labelling everything that you've got, having that translation between the common name and that the Latin name, the original proper name of it. So that could be a nice one. Otherwise, if you've got something around tech language or maybe even actuarial language, you might actually find you might need to have something that's not just the normal sort of routine sort of translation. You may need that. And like Daryl said, maybe for the really large things as well, for the translation or summarization afterwards could be the one. All right, let's have a look at question answer. So we'll do a bit of a example for this one. So there's differences between question answers and conversational language. So question and answers usually will mark in a document. You usually upload a document, whereas language understanding is more about not so much a document input, but pretty much taking some utterances that people might have used when they're talking to a chatbot. The question answering one is really good for setting up knowledge bases, but also using later on down the track for few shot learning for your OpenAI examples as well. So your large language models, just ground it a little bit better, and it will know how to answer a question a lot more to your liking if you give it some examples there. It'll create a knowledge base behind the scenes, and you'll also have multi-turn. Now, multi-turn used to be a big deal. Back in the days when Alexa first came out, Alexa was pretty much, single turn, and then it developed into a multi-turn, and that's when you actually saw Lewis come on the scene as well and able to ask follow-up questions. But of course, it's limited compared to large language models. It's a lot more conversational when you use a large language model versus this older type of language understanding. The other thing that you can do, of course, is custom examples. So you can then test and publish, and you can correct it whenever it's picked up something wrong. Perhaps it's used the wrong intent. It's identified the wrong intent. You can go and fix that, and you can do that via individual, or you can actually load that up via batch as well. So you can go and find all the mistakes that made during a large conversation, extract that, and then go and correct them all in batch. So that's an interesting one as well. And you can basically then use that and consume that for new, once you start to publish that language understanding bot, you can then use that in production and then it will ask more questions. Of course, you may think about as you get more and more questions coming in, you can log all that information and then retrain it as well with some of the examples that are coming through. So that's another good option. Of course, if you had something like this running, you might want to then take that next step into large language models. And all that information that you gathered over the years by using something like language understanding and a bot to a relatively smart bot, you could actually use to ground that information in your large language model. So everything you've learned from this, you can actually apply later on. So this could be a nice stepping stone, or you could just be using it as part of a larger project which went and used OpenAI, Azure OpenAI. So of course it's going to have name value pairs, so that's really nice for few-shot learning. And you would imagine if you're translating that into few-shot learning, the question would be the user and the assistant would be the answer, basically. So that would be your back and forth, and you can have a few of those examples hooked in. And when you do that in Azure OpenAI and use it through the SDK, you would just mark those as assistant, user, that sort of thing, or I should say user assistant, and you would have the system message there as well. So basically setting up this as a knowledge base, you can use that. You can publish as a REST endpoint, and it's available through the SDK, of course. And a little bit there on the differences as we talked about before. With question answering, a user submits a question expecting an answer. There's actually some opportunities there to have follow-up questions, but also add synonyms and also have some alternative questions as well to get the same sort of answer. So you can have multiple questions giving you the same answer there. Daryl, what were you going to say?
I can see a use case for Q&A for like, for example, HR or enterprise policies.
Yes.
And then where does RAG come in?
So for this one, RAG doesn't come really into this one.
Okay.
It does have I don't know whether you can actually typically call it that, but there was your PDFs that you can then load up. There's also a chit chat version as well. That's actually what you would load up as your bring your own data, I suppose, for what you're actually going to be using. So you'd have a FAQ document of some sort that could be then used as a knowledge base, and then it'll go and extract all the name value pairs in there. So that's sort of you actually can't do it without RAG in this instance. If you can call it RAG, I'm not 100% sure you can call it here because it's not a large language model, but you can't do it without having sample data in this case. Does that make sense, Daryl? What else were you going to say?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I was just wondering, during training, it is important to upload the policies or documents, but this could integrate with a SharePoint site, correct? For example, I'm thinking, or is it like an enclosed system? I was wondering, maybe the SharePoint site is more applicable for a RAG kind of solution. But yeah, I'm just thinking in my head.
Yeah, so for a long time, SharePoint couldn't be used for that, and I've seen my husband struggling with that information. They have a huge knowledge base of what all the customers have said about how they've answered certain questions when they've taken insurance policies out and things like that. So they have a huge database. And I've seen a lot of that. All those documents are actually stored in SharePoint, and then they've used that. And with the large language model, yes, it can be a little bit hit and miss using RAG there with SharePoint. It also says in a few instances when you go to create it, you're not allowed to use SharePoint with it. Now, I don't know where that comes from. It is allowed to be used with it, but for some reason you see a lot of hallucinations around that particular question. Can I use SharePoint as a source? And if you ask it straight out, it'll say no. and then you
Got
start
it.
using it and it works, and you go, what? So,
Okay.
yeah,
I was
that's,
just wondering.
yeah,
So it seems like maybe to box it in, Q&A is you feed it with documents that you want it to learn. It will do key value pair based on those whatever you train it with, and then it will also get follow up answers based on those documents
yeah,
inputted
yeah.
as well.
And you
Okay.
can put the synonyms in there as well. So it's the older technology, not using large language models. That's the key difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Just the natural language processing that we used to use, at the beginning, 2017 onwards, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Yeah, I think earlier than that.
So this is just NLP and doesn't use the transformer models
No, that's
that
correct.
LLM utilizes.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's correct. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's not using the LLM. So these are the older, but saying that, you're going to get a lot more. You're not going to suffer from hallucinations with this. It's going to be well grounded, and that's because it all is all based on the information that you're feeding it in the knowledge base. But it is maybe not so limiting in the way that it will give you more predictive results for less money, I suppose, is one of the other things. And it will also allow, it could be a stepping stone into large language models to ground them. So that's why I would always suggest, if you're going to use something like few shot learning, rather than coming up with a list of questions and answers, you get this generated out of a document for you. And that's a really good starting point for your large language models as well.
Makes sense. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so I often hear people, sometimes they come in, some of the other trainers come in and say, oh, well, large language models are ruling, and that's pretty much where we're going now. But I'm still seeing some of the older technology still being relevant these days as well, because I haven't quite nutted out a lot of the problems with large language models. It is amazing breakthrough, but yeah, definitely some of the older technology is still relevant.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. So I suppose on the other side of the coin, it's probably going to be from a data set that you've trained it with a large understanding. You don't need these sort of large data sets or these PDFs to actually train it. You pretty much break it down into some samples, 5 to 10 examples of a customer or the person setting this up actually saying what a customer normally says. So even if you looked at hello, for example, that would be a greeting intent. That would translate to a greeting intent, and it could be hi, hello, or even other variations. How you, it could be a whole lot of different examples to get to that word hello. And then once you train it, of course, it's not rule based. It is AI based, so it does tend to work with a whole lot of different examples that weren't even provided, that are already part of the natural language processing for that. So it's more going to be that both of these can be available on SharePoint. So that was one of the things I didn't quite answer, was the channels that you can actually host these on. You could actually have this on a web page. It could be a web app bot that you use at the end of this, and it could be front facing, it could be on your intranet or your internet pages, your SharePoint, it could be on Teams, for example, or anything else that you may want to have your customers asking questions on, so social media, for example. So these channels, you can put this on just like the large language models. The other interesting thing is the other course I teach is 4010. That one you can take these sorts of things and make your smart application smarter. So in particular, you could create plugins for the existing Teams and 365 stuff. So then it's a coded approach. So it's a pro code approach to what Copilot Studio does, as a low code approach. So all of these can be little skills that you can add to your new plugin there, and that plugin would be like a Copilot type thing. or it could be something a little bit different as well, something you choose from a menu. Just depends how you want to invoke it. So natural language again, but it matches utterances. So what the person used, maybe turn on the light, please turn on the light. You have multiple iterations of how to do that. Lights on, for example, is a very shortened version of that. So we want to match that to an intent called turn lights on or turn lights off, for example. So you match what the person says to the intent, and then that will give you which function to call then. So if you think about an app like that, it could have, especially if it's an Alexa ad, turn on the lights, turn on the TV, turn on the gardening, the watering in the garden, a whole lot of things depending if you've got IoT set up at the moment, all that sort of thing. You can do all these various things, or it might just be ask it a question. So you can imagine there's going to be a lot of different intents. And then maybe if you've got commonality between those intents, like turn on the light, turn on the TV, are very similar, you could maybe just have a turn on function that would then pass the parameter of what the entity was that they're trying to turn on or turn off. So that could very well be where you get some coding wins there to, make it a little bit more dynamic and pass parameters for it. The other thing is it will indicate what is going to be the most likely intent. So there's a user interface for that when you're training it. It'll give it a score and it'll say this is the intent I've come up with. If it's come up with the wrong intent, you can correct it. And like I was saying there, you can correct it interactively, or you can correct it if you've got a rather large system. You might want to correct it using batch techniques and using possibly even coding techniques to actually go through and correct it. It's responsible for performing appropriate action then. So once it detects the utterance, maps it to an intent, it will then go and call the code associated with that. And that might be something behind the scenes where the lights then go on. So the first step in this is to create that knowledge base, and that is similar to your RAG model, but unfortunately it is the whole model, is the data. But you can also add chit-chat, predefined chit-chat. Now, chit-chat comes in professional, witty, clever, all these different options, fun, that sort of thing, depending on what sort of crowd you're looking at giving this to. So creating a custom question answer, of course, you need that option turned on with text. So definitely turn that one on when you create the language understanding, the language service. And then you can basically create the knowledge base and edit questions and answer pairs there. So in this example with a multi-turn, hotel cancellations, and then you would say flight cancellations. I want to cancel my hotel first, and then I want to go in and cancel my flight there. So how may I cancel the reservation is how it all starts with. Now, with a lot of these, of course, if you've ever tested these before, we used to write a few of them. You can write your conversation like, as soon as you start talking to the bot, you just say, I want to book a flight from here to here. I'm aged 50. What is the insurance going to be for that? You can actually ask that and put the dates in there all in one go, or you can answer the questions piecemeal. So you would say, hello, I'm interested in getting insurance for a trip, and then it would then ask you the question. So what's the next question? What dates would you like to go to? Where would you like to go to? So you can answer those all sequentially if you like, or even in a random order, or you can pretty much then put everything into that very first prompt that you use and it'll be able to work it out. But in the example of the follow-ups, that's one big area where large language models differ. And we know we have about 30 turns in Copilot, for example, before it starts to hallucinate. So you can have those, well, even sooner sometimes, you can have that conversation, more natural conversation, compared to language understanding, which is NLP. So it has limited follow-up capabilities. There you test interactively in the language studio, inspect the confidence scores like we said, and then you can add alternate phrases and synonyms here. Whether you're using language understanding or the question and answer, you can use either of those. And then you can publish the trained knowledge base, and that can be used as input for other things later on. So it could be used for your document intelligence even. It could be part of a skill set of different skills you use as part of, say, a federated search. So that's another option, and that's part of, even decisions and decision making. It could also factor into things like your recommender systems or things like that. You can publish the knowledge base, and then you can use it with the SDK within your app there. So there's some input there. What do I need to do to cancel a reservation? You can see examples there where it's now giving the answer. You can call this, and then there's a best matched best matched question. So it's matching the utterance to the intent, and then you can see this metadata information, and that's a confidence score, how confident it is that it's picked up the right answer there. And there's a couple of different things that happen behind the scenes. I suppose you can explicitly tell it how to fix things or match things, or natural language itself has a very good approach to actually implicitly working out suggestions, for example. So behind the scenes, you could use both of these techniques. Tell it the more complex things, you could actually tell it to have these sort of matchings, give it a bit of a leg up. Otherwise, it can try and work out the answer from there without having to put too much legwork in up front. You can create synonyms, like I said before. So, of course, this is really useful when you've got systems and you're trying to get some help with a system, and the wording that IT use might be very different from the way the business area would use the terminology. So that's where the synonyms would play a big part. So you can give words that are known by other ways or other words to give you even more flexibility there. So alterations, reservation, booking is some synonyms there. So that's basically matching answer to the feedback records there, and you can improve this, of course. So let's have a quick look at the tool itself. So I started that service up before. Let's have a look at the Language Studio. So if I was to log out of this, I'm just going to sign out so you can see what it looks like when you first come in. Oh, any questions so far? Had some good questions along the way there. Well done, Daryl. Right, that's okay.
No question from me, thanks.
That's all right. Excellent. All right, so there you go. Yeah, there's an example where you can set up a 200 as your credit there if you want to try some of these things out that are giving you a bit of grief in the labs. You can try some of that out as well. Your organisations might provide a demo sort of area for you to try things out as well. So let's sign in. And just going to log on as me. And then it will try to work out whether there's a service there already. And I know I already created that service I showed you earlier. I'll just get rid of this, sorry about that. So it gets me to choose a subscription and whether I want, what sort of language I want, whether I want a cognitive service, a language or a translator. Yeah, it depends whether I'm going to do translation as well as language. Cognitive service, set for translation. I think that's the older one. So let's go into language, and I'm going to choose the one I have there. So if I chose cognitive, let's see what I had on the list. There you go. So the cognitive one has the multi-AI that I created before. But because we're using Q&A, we're going to want to get more specific. So I don't want to use the generic one. I definitely want to use a more specific one. So that's why I'm going to go to the language option and choose this 102 text. So this is the language specific AI service versus the AI multi-service there. Translator is another service I could have used if I was doing translation as well. So now that I have that set up, I'm just going to hit done. And I could have created one there at that point, but I usually tend to get people to create it up front because I've had issues with that creation before where you create it on the fly. So I'd always get people to go in there and create it first. So now I've selected that. You can actually see which one's selected up the top. So I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to go, I created this project a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go and create a custom question answering project. And this time I'm going to use English. So it says, what is the main language? Otherwise you could choose as you're going as well. And it is English. And I'm just going to call that Learn FAQ 2. And I'm just going to go and grab the instructions for that because I don't know whether I've got that there. I'm just going to go and grab that now. So there's some instructions on there with a URL. That's the only thing I really need. I've got that there. Sorry about the cat if you need a cat. So if I scroll through this question and answering one, it's talking about creating the service. And then you'll see it go in there, and we're now going to, there's some examples there of the settings, and then we're going to go and get this document. So this is the FAQ document. We have a look at that. Actually, oh, very interesting. I don't know why that did. Went back to the other screen. So let's do that again. Oh, it is using the FAQ from a particular web page there. So that's an interesting one. So yes, it sounds, Daryl, like you can use SharePoint for the input as well for that, and because you can use web pages for that in particular. So that's telling you all the ins and outs of how to use learning paths and things like that. So frequently asked questions. So let's go and grab that. About that. Let's go back here and we will use, let's see. No answer found. This is the default answer. I don't know. So if it doesn't find a name value pair for your question and answers, it'll just say I don't know. So hit next, and then create the project. And then I'm going to add my source now. So that's the URL. I can add some other files as well. I'm going to call that MSFAQ. So it doesn't really matter what you call it there. But the other thing I can do is I can add other things as well. So I add that source first. And I found it much better if you just add one at a time and then go back and add something else. I've had mixed results with this sometimes. Just waiting for that to index, I suppose. And that's in there now, so I can add other sources. So if I wanted to pick up a local file, although we saw how well that did yesterday, that was a bit of a nightmare. Lab files, vision, I could go back to one of these other ones and go and pick up another file, and then it can answer questions from multiple files if I wanted to. Or in particular, what I can do is I'm going to cancel that and add chit chat. So when you add chit chat, you used to do this slightly differently in the old days of question answer. You used to be able to sort of add that as part of it, but now it's just an additional source. So it's already been trained on certain things. So maybe enthusiastic we can have for that one, or professional. So you can see there's lots of different options for the chit chat, and it's only available in some languages. So that's the other thing you consider. So we'll just put standard, chit chat in there. Just waiting for that to. I haven't tried this type of chit chat before. There you go. The two sources are in there now, and then I can start training that. So if I come into here, so I'm sort of just going sequentially through here. I can actually see that now it's done, because it had already done the indexing before. It's gone and matched a whole lot of things. So these sorts of things are just the chit chat ones. So if you scroll down, hey R2D2, so these are all just part of chit chat. Wish I had a friend. What is a collection? So we're starting to see for the learning paths in Microsoft Learn, we're starting to see some real questions there. So do I need to create a profile to use Microsoft Learn? So you can then go and edit the answer if you want, or you can have alternate questions. How do I create a profile? So these are actually a couple of answers that have the same sort of question, so you'll resolve to the same place. No, profile creation isn't required. So there you go, you don't have to have a profile creation. You can see the answers just here. What is a learning path? A collection of training, blah, blah, blah. So you can actually see these. You can then go and overwrite. So you can add an alternative question there for this particular answer. What is learning? Just make it generic. And then you can also show rich text edits. Wants me to save that change first. So I'll save that change. Let's have a look at this context tree as well so you can see what's going on there. So there you go. You can see what is going to result, what questions are going to result there. Skip. And you can test it out to see if it's working okay. So what is a collection? Collections allow you to easily curate and organize sets of content. So that's just a question out of here. You can then have a look at some metadata as well. And let's see what else we've got. We can then go and what have we got? Import questions and answers. So you can also import additional things from Excel. TSV I haven't used, but there's some options there. Filter and legend model. No, I haven't used that before. So that's, the legend model. Okay. So these are all the questions that it's worked out. You can have a look at the sources. And then if we go on, we can actually deploy that now. And if we're happy with that and we don't need any follow-up questions to be added, then we can actually follow that and get prediction URL. So then you can then go and call that and with curl, and then you could see you can give it a test in here as well. So it's giving you some information around the deployment, where it's deployed it, and you can then go and create that bot that I talked about as part of a web app that you would create there for that one. So if you remember, there was that additional service in this one when I was trying it out. So you'll be pretty much doing this in the lab, so don't want to ruin it too much for you, but that's basically the sort of process you would go through there. And there's the bot getting created, so you can create that in the same place. And I already have one, so I'll just go and create another one. And you can have a standard plan there for pricing, and you need to be able to create a new user assigned managed identity. So review and create, and that will actually, there's a problem there with that. I didn't give it a name, or I didn't choose something off the list. I already had one of these before. Probably first time through, you'll be saying create a new app service there, and you'll have your resource group key and all that sort of thing that you need to fill in. So that's basically if you wanted to create a web app from that. Anything else? You can review these suggestions. So if you've got a couple of different people looking at this, they can go in and suggest some new options, and then you can go and fix those as well. You can reject or you can accept the suggestions that people have made. And there's the setting for the project there. All right, so that is a little bit of an end-to-end with Q&A. So we'll get you to do the lab now. Did anyone have any questions? Yeah. If you want a little bit more time, after you do the question and answer, if you want to try one of the other options, give that a go as well. Just be careful, you may not have that second option ticked, in which case you may not be able to do everything, but give it a go, see what you can achieve during that lab break. It's a lab. And I'll try to get that key vault from yesterday working while you're doing this lab. Because the demos today are going okay so far. I'm not running into permission issues like I did yesterday. And I realised what it was. I did get a ping yesterday in the afternoon saying there had been some changes to the way that you upload things there. So we have a lot of policies applied at the Azure level that I didn't know were new. And again, got caught off guard just like with the labs. So I'll go and try and fix that as well today. All right, next slide then. A few people are already in there. So I'm going to cancel the one I did earlier. And we're now going to launch this one here. Here it is. So Q&A lab. And if you want, I think we're going to have, yeah, I think we'll probably be doing these two later on today. So you can do both of these as well. So we'll talk about language understanding a little bit later. All right, enjoy your lab. I'll start a timer for you. We'll go through until 12:30. And if you've got any questions, just yell out and we can come back early and answer any of those questions. So, oh, that's not lunch though. Thinking of lunch. So I'll put that through to 12:30. All right, enjoy your hour in the lab. Have fun. No questions? All right, have fun.